Hello again. This is Franco from the Ad Lib Podcast, and today we're joined by the amazing Amanda Nell Eu. Can you please? That's correct.
Yes,
That's how.
correct. Yeah.
Awesome. So, by the way, Andrea couldn't join us because he's sick, but he's actually already celebrating St. Patrick's Day. He got hungover yesterday. He's no, I'm joking. I hope he gets well soon. And we're joined by the first Malaysian director to win the Cannes Prize of 2023. For the prize was the Critics Week Grand Prize for the movie
Tiger Stripes.
Tiger Stripes. So, thank you for accepting the invite. Like I said before, I'm very excited. By the way, I didn't have my kaya toast yet.
Your what?
My kaya toast.
What's your kaya toast? Wow.
Because I have to shout out some Malaysian friends that I met in Korea. His family gave me kaya and it was great, and I haven't had it since.
Yes.
So
sorry, for a second I was like, what is he saying? I don't know what.
No worries.
I wouldn't expect you to talk about kaya, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine. But I have to shout out my friend Caleb and Soen Young. They're Malaysian. Like I said, I met them in Korea. Amazing family as well. So we're starting with the interview. We're going to talk about Tiger Stripes, but this is the first question that we ask all of our guests, and it's a very important filmmaking question. What do you think about pineapple on pizza?
Oh my God, no. No way. I really detest it. I have to pick it all out. Yeah, I can't do it. I actually don't really like fruit on anything savory. So
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, technically tomato is a fruit though, but so it's
tomato is a fruit, but I mean, like, the very, very sweet kind, like the sugary kind. Tomato is fine. Avocado is fine. Yeah.
Avocado's nice. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, this is let's skip food for now because I haven't had breakfast. But so we're going to talk Tiger Stripes. How would you describe Tiger Stripes to our viewers and listeners who haven't yet to see the movie?
Okay, Tiger Stripes. So it's my first feature. It's a story about a young girl who is experiencing puberty, which can be very difficult. And basically it kind of leads to a very extreme transformation she's going through, to the point where it's quite terrifying. And she starts to fear what's happening to herself. Her friends start to fear who she is, her parents, her community, her school, and basically her whole community turn against her, and she has to figure out her way, her journey to learn how to love herself and appreciate all these things that she's been afraid of is actually her power. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so for whoever hasn't seen the movie, skip this part. But I said it is the first demonic possession movie where I was siding with the demon. It's like, please, yeah, I'm like, go for a demon, because she was
Yes.
At the end, she felt so free and in her element. There's so many aspects that we can tackle with this movie. So, but first, let's get a bit talk about the context of the filmmaking industry, because I personally knew more about the Indonesian film industry, and this was my first movie that introduced me to the Malaysian film industry. How would you describe it? The history is Malaysian horror a thing in Malaysia, or again, I'm genuinely not to sound crass, but I'm genuinely ignorant and idiot about Malaysian film industry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Actually, Malaysian film industry used to be really huge, like in the times of the colonial times during Malaya. So we had, the Shaw Brothers, we had Cathay, we had all these big, production companies making a lot of these films that were, from the 50s, from the 60s, and they were really crazy films, and I think to this day considered quite cult films now. But then, I don't know, there's suddenly this kind of that all ended. And we also had this thing called the Malaysian New Wave, which was probably about over 10 years ago, where there were Malaysian filmmakers who were making films that reached at least an international audience. But again, that also slowed down a bit. So it's funny because, you know, there's a whole thing about when Tiger Stripes went to Cannes. It's been maybe over 10 years since the last Malaysian film was in Cannes.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, it's been quiet, at least in the independent filmmaker side. In terms of commercial and everything, I think every country has their own commercial studios and the kind of films that people like. In general, in Malaysia, I think what's very popular is horror and also action films. They really love action films. They really love horror films. But I think something like Tiger Stripes is very weird. It's not a normal film in Malaysia, basically. Yeah.
Okay. How is it not normal? Is it because of the thematics, or is it because why would you consider not normal?
I think it's definitely pushing on different themes. It's using horror to talk about more social aspects, of the characters and the world. But also, yeah, the way it was made, it was very much done in an independent way. So we did the very art house route where we went through all the script writing labs in Europe, and we also did the film markets, and I had short films that were traveling in these nice festivals and things like that. So it was really built through that system, and we found that we had a lot more creative freedom to do that as well. Whereas I think maybe something like Tiger Stripes, yeah, if I was to pitch it to maybe an investor in Malaysia, before it was made, they would be like, no way, this is a weird film. Why are we rooting for the demon? We always have to destroy the demon, right? Like you were saying. So I love the demon. I think I am the demon. So I like the demon. Yeah.
Let's hope you didn't detach heads from people, though. That's all the only thing.
I don't know. If you cross me, you might.
You listen, viewers, take care. No. Okay, so in this context, how did you start your journey into filmmaking? Where did you go to film school, or were you just a hobbyist first, and then you tell your story, basically?
Yeah, so I was born in Malaysia, but then I moved to the UK when I was about 12 years old. And so I basically grew up in the UK in my teenage years. Then I went to art school. But when I was in art school, I would only make short films. I was constantly making animations and short films, and this was a graphic design course. To this day, I'm really bad at Photoshop and Illustrator. I really suck at it. And so basically I was like, okay, I think I need to go to film school. So yeah, eventually I went to film school in the UK. And then after graduating that, I was like, I don't know what the hell I want to do, what I want to, I had no idea what kind of stories I wanted to tell or really what my identity was, because I was so confused being Malaysian, being brought up in UK, and I decided to go back to Malaysia, and that's when everything clicked. That's when I realized kind of what kind of stories that were important to me, or at least my voice. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting as well, because it's the first movie that I heard. Because again, with my friends, I spoke mostly English, but then it's the first time I heard Bahasa Melayu. And it was really interesting. And it's similar to Indonesian, but it's
similar but different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I would call it localized as far as setting goes. Obviously, the themes are much larger, much more universal. But I was I could tell. Whenever I watched it again yesterday, just skimmed through it to refresh my memory. The lush nature, it was amazing, and I'm like, okay, now I want to go visit Malaysia just to see as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm jumping from point to point, because I was wondering whether there's a contrast between the cosmopolitan atmosphere to the to the more rural areas. As far as like I was going to ask you about like the gender politics and the taboos that go into being like a burgeoning young woman, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of the gender politics, there actually isn't that much difference between what's happening in the city areas, in the urban areas compared to rural. It's actually quite similar. And so that's why when I was, writing the story, I never wanted the setting to be kind of a known place in Malaysia. It was more meant to be a fairy tale, like a fable. So it was this idea where we learn so much from fairy tales, right? Fairy tales have these crazy things, and then you start to learn about life. You start to learn about, society through fairy tales. And so that was really the intention of it. And so even the jungles that you were talking about and how beautiful it looks. I mean, even the way we shot it, I was working with the DOP and we were trying to push it so that the jungles looked almost artificial. So like, yes, our jungles are beautiful, but we have pushed it so it made it look more magical, more like it was hyper realistic, more fantastical. And that was really the intention. And also another thing, it was really because I was wanting to stay true to the folk tales that we have in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia. And a lot of our folk tales are really inspired by nature. A lot of these stories, they always come from nature, from the trees, from the jungle, from the darkness of the jungle, from the lightness of the jungle. So I really wanted to kind of play with this idea of what nature embodies for this character, like in this sense where nature can be very terrifying, very brutal, very dark, but then it's also very free because you don't have to live up to these expectations. You don't have to live up to these walls that are built. You don't have to line up in all these lines. It's wild, things grow and things are alive and things are dead, and it's a crazy place. So it's really that idea of nature, and then we have the school and the house, and that's the difference. But it was never really about like difference between rural and city. It was more like a fairy tale, of sorts.
I'm smiling because I've written down that it has an air of a dark fairy tale, of a dark folk tale. Would you? It's like almost rewriting Malaysian mythology now in a sort of in a more contemporary context, I would say. So, and I wanted to ask you your influences as well, like who's influencing you now, who influenced you like in the past.
I'm constantly influenced all the time, right? Like, so it's really hard to say. I fell in love with cinema when I was a teenage girl, like when I was like 13 years old. I was watching like, all these black and white films, horror films as well. Horror was definitely the first love that I fell in love with. So I think a lot of influences come from, these kind of ideas of horror, these kind of ideas of like even B-movie horror, which I absolutely love, like to the point where sometimes it becomes comedy, and that's really like a huge influence of mine. And I think part of it is really because I have so much joy in seeing all these films since I was a kid, like seeing blood everywhere or like limbs being torn. Like I love it. I'm just like, this is crazy, this is nuts. And like I found so much joy to the point where I was like, even when I go to the cinema and I see horror films, I like sometimes clap quietly when it's like, when everyone is like terrified. I'm like, yes, this is so fun. So I think a lot of that, like the joy of genre, I think is a huge influence. And of course, aside from that, like books, music, everything really. But I think genre is really the starting influence of everything.
It reminded me a bit of Cat People. Not I don't know. I haven't seen the Schrader's version, but Jacques Tourneur's and his lighting is. Oh man, it was. By the way,
so good. Essentially, it's the same story. It's
I know exactly, and very modern. And by the way, I wanted to have our special guest, but he said no. So this is since you're a cat person.
Oh my God, it's okay. I understand. You have a busy life. You have No,
but he's like, nope, I'm opening apples here. So, Yeah, I heard from some other interviews that your cat as well inspired you as well in doing this. So tell us
Yes,
more about
yeah.
it.
No, my cats are huge inspirations. I always say they're like my muse in life, I think. I love that they're just so strange, aren't they? They have like this air of confidence, and they get exactly what they want. They tell you what they want. They also teach you about consent. It's like, don't touch me when I don't want to be touched. Like all this stuff. There's
Yes.
so many great things about cats that I'm like, you are an inspiration. But no, but aside from that, yeah, like I remember telling like even the makeup artists like, like the tail, and I wanted to look like a sphinx tail and things like that. So yeah, I just love that.
That's something that I appreciated as well in this movie. Usually Andrea and I will go like, we really like the practical effects. We've become a bit of Luddites in the realms of CGI. It's like, really like the practical effects in this. So as far as inspiration goes, like what other movies would you mention? We mentioned Cat People. What else?
Yeah, I think a big inspiration was actually coming from those black and white films in Malaya by the Shaw brothers, by the Cathay production companies, because during that time, that was when we had our folk monsters like the Pontianak, on the silver screen. She had a trilogy like of films, and even kind of the practical effects at that time was very heavy, very strange, but there was this kind of ugliness that I was so drawn to, and that was something that I wanted to play with, because I felt like this hideous monster, at the same time how folklore is, she's very beautiful. So I wanted to have that kind of flavor that I think we have in Southeast Asia, where we have this kind of balance of ugly, beauty, very, very kind of primal, very much like it's bizarre, it's gnarly, it's not what you're used to. Like, she's not a beautiful, sexy vampire. She is very strange. Her face is deformed, and she's also very attractive. So it's playing with that. So a big inspiration was from these old I guess folkloric icons that were on the silver screen at the time. And then aside from that as well, one of the biggest inspirations I think in terms of visuals is this film called Hausu, which is by Obayashi in the 70s. I mean, it's like, if you look at Tiger Stripes, you look at how we graded it, how we put the color on it, it's 100% like so inspired by Hausu. And I also love how Hausu has so much bizarre, wild comedy. It's very strange and also very girly. And so it was, that was a huge inspiration for sure.
And there's also a cat in it as well, the cat with the glowing eyes.
There's also a cat, there's blood, there's like flying, there's heads as watermelons.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And the effects are just so crazy, it doesn't have to be all slick. Sometimes, it can be quite comedic, and still it counts as terror, it still counts as horror, and I think I like to have fun with that.
Yeah, House was very interesting because he came, as if I'm not mistaken, he came from the advertisement area of filmmaking, and it looks a bit like it's going to be like, oh, how nice, and then all of a sudden you see pianos eating people. By the way,
yeah, you see pianos, blood,
viewers, highly suggest Hausu, and you reminded me I have to rewatch it as well.
Yes.
Sorry for my ignorance. So I thought the Shaw brothers were from Hong Kong, but they're actually Malaysian.
They actually started in Malaya. So all the big productions were from Malaya, Singapore, and then later they moved on to Hong Kong after the independence in Malaysia.
Okay.
Like that. No, my history is very bad, but this is the general gist that they started here. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. It's good to know, because I've always had this idea that it's all from Hong Kong. I mean, I think did Michelle Yeoh start with the Shaw brothers?
Yes. Yeah. So they moved to Hong Kong by that time, but in the 50s, like after World War II, it was in Malaya. That was where they started.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I sometimes when I watch a movie, I see it like a window into the culture or the society at large in the country itself and contemporary culture. So I cannot wrap my hand around how it's still taboo, especially that it comes. We have three characters in the movie. We have Zaffan, the let's call her the wild one for lack of better words. She has her two best friends, Farah and Mariam. And it's interesting how it's Farah herself like shaming her about her changes and one who's shunning her and shaming her. Is it still as pervasive in current culture?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I can give you an example is when we tried to release the film in Malaysia in the cinema, the very scene that was censored was when you saw her have period blood in the toilet, and it's on a pad, right? And we're allowed blood on stabbing or killing and everything, but like a period blood is still, they were just like, you can't show this. And it's just strange to me that, we're allowed to show very violent blood, but very natural blood is not allowed. I think, it is still, I guess, what I wanted to talk about as well was really this idea of how kids are so nasty to each other, especially when one changes. I remember as well, like, when I was at school and the first girl who got her period, we totally like thought she was an alien. We were like staring at her body. We were looking at whether, if she goes swimming, whether the blood would come out. And I remember girls would even put like chocolate on these pads and put it in her pillow and put it in her bag. Like, it was nasty. And it's so weird because we're all going to get it. But I think it's this idea of going against something that you don't know. Right? Like, Zaffan gets her period. This is something new to Farah. And now she sees her friend as something different. Like, you're not the same as us. So I have to go against you. And of course, that happens all over the world, right? When we see someone different, we see someone we don't know, we tend to have a very violent reaction against it. And I think that's really what the theme is about in Tiger Stripes. Of course, I make it extreme where Zaffan turns into a literal monster. And then it's to challenge her people, like, can you accept me, or do you fear me because you don't know who I am? So it's just that build up, but yeah, I'm annoyed that period is taboo still. I thought maybe not, but because they censored that scene, I'm like, okay, it is.
No, we will not censor. We will not censor it. Even though I know I'm a guy, I wish you would be like, oh no, when it comes to
it's very strange.
No.
But yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is really it's a story about fearing someone who is different to you. Yeah.
Okay. Even though I thought that at the end Farah still wanted, despite her shunning them, I think in the back of her mind, like she knew she's going to become that person, that alien, that monster herself, and she wanted in, because even Mariam as well was almost abandoning her as well.
Yeah. So what you mean right at the end where Farah's like, actually, guys, can I come play?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, you can't. But
sorry.
I think that's, that was really like the question at the end was really about, will Farah kind of break through all her fears? Because she's always like, the reason why I had Farah as this character was really to represent our fears. We're so afraid of things that are different. We're so afraid of really accepting the ugly parts of ourselves. We're so afraid of seeing ourselves, fully for who we really are. Zaffan has done it. She's embraced herself as a monster and, has risen to it. Maybe risen. Like, I always like to have this, duality of it. Like, and unfortunately, she's risen, but she has to leave her home and leave her family, right? But of course, we have the other friend who comes round, and the other friend, Mariam, has also found her freedom and her strength. And so the question is, can Farah throw away those fears, throw away her hatred, throw away what she's learned, that is considered bad, and make decisions for herself, basically. Yeah.
As I would also ask then, because now that I'm thinking about it, what is one thing you always wanted to speak about, but in interviews they never ask you, and you're like, I hope they ask me about this, you know?
I have no idea. I don't have that thing. I like to like surprise me with the questions.
Okay. You know, because it feels like I generally try not to go through the common route of oh, you're a female director. How does it feel?
Yeah.
I don't want that. So it's interesting to see what other things you would like. What stuff you thought about in this process, like. Yeah, you can only tell me, because I generally try to find these interesting questions, but then I saw all the interviews. I'm like, oh shit, I'm saying all the stuff again.
No, I mean, it's a conversation, isn't it? But I think I'm quite happy like that I got to share what Farah really means, because I think sometimes a lot of audiences watch it and they're like, oh, she's so mean, she's such a bully, I hate her so much. And actually, to me, like, Farah is one of my favorite characters, because she's basically a lot of us. We are not as strong as Zaffan. We are not as free as Zaffan. And it's my challenge. Like, the film is also challenging you. Like, can you accept, can you break away your expectations of what beauty is, for example? Can you break away your expectations of what a young girl is supposed to do, and all these things? So yeah, it's nice to talk about that. I got to share a bit about Farah and really my intention for how she is at the end.
I just realized it's also interesting that it is the only scene where she removes her veil. Otherwise, she doesn't. She's always like.
Oh no, she does also in the.
Oh yeah, in the camp. But I felt her sense. She was. It's that freedom was overwhelming for her at the end. Like, she couldn't take it. Yeah. Who would you say are your current favorite directors now?
Current favorite? I mean, Park Chan-wook is like an incredible director. I also I'm a big fan of. Well, yeah. I mean, recently, Anatomy of a Fall really blew me away. That was such an incredible film. Yeah, I think those stood out. I'm a big fan of Yorgos Lanthimos as well, so I think.
Oh yes.
I love. Yeah, he goes there. He's very bizarre. He has his own kind of crazy voice, and I think that's awesome. I love it. So yeah, I love those directors right now.
That was very interesting for me as well. Speaking of the experience of cinema, because here in Malta, it's usually the action films that do well, or those like the kids' movies, and then you have Poor Things, a very left of field movie, and people still like, at first people were like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And then after like a stretch 20 minutes, I hear the people laughing and enjoying it so much. That was such a great experience. And
yeah, I think it's because he has a sense of humor, and so it's like, as bizarre and as like the world he's built is already so weird, but like he still kind of brings in the humor that is relatable, I think, and so maybe it touches other people who's not used to it.
No, it's true, and it's also interesting how there's this contradiction in the discourse as well, because I saw, speaking of female freedom and empowerment, I saw her as very like. She was sexualized, but not in such a way that she has no agency. It was actually part and parcel of her discovery, and people still say, "No, you were sexualizing." I'm like, but it's part of the journey, and
that's why I love Poor Things. Like, even as someone who's so, whenever I make my films or whenever I'm thinking about female characters, it's to think about their sexuality, how to desexualize it and not have this gaze where they're sexualized. And when I was watching Poor Things, it's like putting it in your face to the point where, to me, she's empowered. That is when, she's free with her sexuality, and that is part of her power, and that is her pleasure. And I love that about Poor Things. I'm like, let this woman have her pleasure, and do not berate that, because women are allowed to be sexualized in their way, and they're allowed to find pleasure in their own way.
Yeah, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't, almost. I see.
Oh yeah, always. It's the same thing. I mean, like, it's the same thing with let's say wearing the hijab, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I think
Yeah,
it's always our choice, and let women just do what the hell they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, like Farah made her choice. I mean, even though as much as we wanted her to also experience the freedom, she made her choice
But
to
also,
stay.
yeah, I made it very, very clear, like I have Zaffan who's always removing her hijab, but like never, like I think, it's nice when people notice Mariam never removes her hijab. And even after she's found her freedom and her strength, she decides she doesn't want to remove it. And that's fine. And I think I wanted to show that representation as well. It's not, do not dictate what women wear and what they don't wear, so I wanted Mariam to still wear her hijab, to still represent her strength in her own way, and her love for for herself and for her friend.
It's a very unfortunately it's a very westernized image of if a woman wears hijab, she's not free. I mean,
yes, exactly. So I wanted to kind of also have Mariam there to be like, she is free too, and her wildness and her freedom is not the same as Zaffan's wildness, but she's just as wild and free. So it's
exactly. Is there much difference except for the fact that I'm gonna keep this is mine, and she owns it basically. But it's also I saw that this movie was compared a lot to Julia Ducournau's work. What do you think of that?
Yes, a lot of people have compared that. I love Julia Ducournau. I mean, I think she opened the gates so that people like me can make more films.
Julia ran so Amanda could do. Julia walked.
Exactly.
So Amanda could do.
She took those steps so that more of us can go behind.
And I'm looking forward also to see Rose's Glass, Love Lies Bleeding now as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I would like to see that. Yeah.
Oh man, I hope it comes out. I mean, we don't have censorship, but most of these movies don't come out here as well. So
right, yeah.
Speaking of censorship, this was very interesting to me. So, your movie was one of the victims of censorship. Is it still how shall I put it? Is it still an issue in Malaysia, like censorship and what's taboo and what's not?
Oh no, of course it's a big issue. I think when you have something like censorship in power at play, it's an issue not just for films, and it's an issue for all artists, like writers, visual artists. Like it's always a problem for us that we have to navigate around. Either we try to self-censor. I see that a lot happening. Of course, people have to self-censor if they want their work out. I don't like doing that. I understand why people have to do that. There's, with Tiger Stripes, we had a kind of privilege because, like I said earlier on, the way we put together the film was very much through soft money. So it was through a lot of grants. So we have like an 8-country co-production, but we didn't have to answer to investors. We didn't have to promise to make box office because everything was done through, public funds. So in that sense, that was why I could kind of make a statement about censorship and be angry about it and disagree with it. But I also understand filmmakers, if they have investors, they need to have box office. They need to please the audience, right? They can't go and tell the audience, don't watch the film because it's censored, which is essentially what I did. But, so they have, sometimes you have your hands tied behind your back and you have to self-censor. And that's always tricky, yeah.
No, so we're almost at the end of it. I mean, I know we are now, but I think this was a very informative conversation. What is your next work then going to be about?
Oh my God, I'm currently writing it, so it's like crazy all over the place. But I think this time I want to do a period film, like a gothic film, all in a house set in like the late 1930s in Malaya. So, but still, there's going to be blood. It's probably going to be more violent, more mature, more
Let's go. More blood. Let's go.
More blood, but definitely having fun with this kind of gothic kind of genre. Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. I look forward to seeing it. Now, I this question just popped up because you were saying about the development. I read that the development started in 2017.
Yeah.
I feel, was it an uphill struggle for you, or like?
Actually, no. Everything was very smooth. That's pretty much how long it takes for
Oh wow!
for
Okay.
a first film done in the independent way, done in the public route. Like, I think there was no everything. I think how we started was very much, we didn't know and a lot of things, and every step of the way we were just learning, and we were so like lucky to have our journey was very much about having all these great people, all these mentors, all these people coming on board to kind of teach us and to kind of help us and collaborate with. And so we just built our knowledge and on how to make the film over the 5 years. Of course, I think the biggest struggle is COVID. So we wanted to shoot in 2020 and then it postponed and we only ended up shooting in 2022. So yeah, in that sense, you can blame it on COVID, but
yeah. Everything blames it on COVID. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I wish Andrea could also join in because he would have some questions. Yeah, anything else you'd like to add on? Also, to our viewers and listeners, what would you like to say for them to watch your movie?
To what? I don't know. I mean, go watch it if you want to have fun and have a wild ride, because I think it's a pretty fun ride. It's a very fun film, and the music is awesome. So, yeah.
Geber modus operandi. Yes.
Yeah. Very good.
It's very interesting. Like I tried to listen to their set on Boiler Room, but it was like, okay, I have to take it track by track because it's quite intense.
It's super intense, yeah.
but the tracks you chose for the movie, they're really like, I was bopping my head while I was watching this nature shot as well. So, Andrea, would you like to add something before we end this? I think
we can conclude here, guys. So yeah, I've been soldiering on here.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. But most importantly, thank you, Amanda, for joining us. It was an interesting 40 minutes, and we wish you the best of luck. And I look forward to seeing that gothic piece as well.
Me too. I look forward to it.
Looking forward to that.
Okay. So bye, listeners and viewers. We'll catch you on our usual broadcasts. Tschüss.
Okay.
Bye. Ciao.